My name is Nancy, and my world turned upside down when I discovered my husband, Terry, was unfaithful. We had been high school sweethearts and were together for 7 years before we tied the knot. It felt like we were meant to be, but our story didn't end with happily ever after. Out of the blue, one of Terry's employees reached out to me with undeniable evidence of his affair. Terry wasn't just anyone. He was a well-respected businessman in our small town. For anonymity, I've changed the names involved in my story. So, you'll hear about Terry, my soon-to-be ex-husband, and Michelle, his mother. The revelation of Terry's cheating left me in shock for a whole week. But the person who finally jolted me out of denial was none other than Terry himself. He casually mentioned that he wanted a divorce, claiming he didn't love me anymore and had already made up his mind. I was bewildered and asked him why, hoping there was some mistake. His response was blunt. He simply didn't love me anymore. When I confronted him about the affair, he turned pale, clearly not expecting me to know. His reaction shifted from shock to denial, insisting he wasn't in love with me and wanted a divorce for that reason alone. However, I wasn't about to let him off easily, especially after I'd dedicated years of my life to our relationship. I reminded him of the prenuptial agreement we had, which was ironically his idea to protect himself in the event of a divorce, aimed at preventing me from cheating. But now the tables had turned. Terry tried to persuade me to settle things amicably without adhering strictly to the prenup, clearly worried about the consequences of his actions being brought to light. This situation led me to a crossroads, facing the end of what I once believed was a perfect union, and the beginning of a challenging but necessary journey to reclaim my life and dignity. I had no intention of cheating, so when Terry suggested a prenuptial agreement, I saw it as reasonable and agreed. Little did Terry realize that one day, the tables would turn, and he would be the one caught in an affair. It seemed Terry had fallen for someone else, someone who, according to my online sleuthing, could easily be mistaken for a supermodel. Good for Terry, I thought, trying to find some humor in the painful situation. However, discovering Terry's affair didn't break me as much as it fueled a fiery determination within me. Gone were my feelings of love for him. Replaced with a resolve to stand up for myself, Terry's desire to leave me for his mistress, while also trying to sidestep the financial implications due to our prenup, only added to my anger. I made it clear to him that I wasn't going to let him walk away without fulfilling the agreement we had in place. His attempts to persuade me to ignore his betrayal for a smooth split were futile. I had evidence of his affair, and I was ready to use it. Terry's reaction was one of frustration and defiance. "Damn you, Nancy," he exclaimed, wishing I would just let him move on peacefully. But how could I, especially after he had insisted on the prenup to protect himself, now that he was the one at fault? His threats to make things difficult for me if I pursued my rightful share did nothing but strengthen my resolve. After he stormed out, likely to be with his mistress, the emotions I had tried to hold back overwhelmed me. I cried, not just from sadness but also from anger and disbelief at how wrong I had been in choosing Terry as my partner. Despite the years I had devoted to loving him, I refused to let him have the final say. In my quest for support and perhaps advice, I reached out to Michelle, my mother-in-law, who was unlike the stereotype of the difficult in-law. Michelle was incredibly wealthy, yet her character was the antithesis of her son's. She was a woman of integrity, kindness, and respect. Despite my fears of losing her due to my past experiences of abandonment, I decided to confide in her, albeit not disclosing every detail of the situation. Michelle's response was to encourage reconciliation, a testament to her loving nature. Yet I found myself in a quandary. Revealing the full extent of Terry's betrayal could potentially alienate Michelle, someone I valued deeply. My past, marked by abandonment, made the thought of losing another person I cared about daunting. Despite Michelle's well-meaning attempts at mediation, I knew that reconciling with Terry wasn't an option. The path ahead was unclear, but I was determined to navigate it with dignity and assert my rights, armed with evidence and a clear conscience. In the aftermath of my discovery, I decided to leave Terry's house and start afresh in my apartment. During this tumultuous period, Michelle, my mother-in-law, became a beacon of unexpected support. Despite fearing that she might side with her son, she surprised me with her reaction. One day, Michelle urgently requested to meet me at my new place, her demeanor laden with concern. She arrived looking particularly somber, revealing she had something critical to discuss about Terry. Before she could delve into the details, I preempted her concerns by disclosing my awareness of Terry's infidelity, backed by evidence from one of his employees. Michelle was taken aback. She had only just learned about the betrayal and the ensuing divorce from Terry himself. Her immediate reaction was one of self-reproach. She lamented her perceived failure in raising her son properly and broke down in tears. Witnessing her distress, I felt a profound sense of compassion for her. Michelle had always been more than a mother-in-law to me. She had become family, offering me the maternal support I cherished. As we shared this emotional moment, Michelle hesitated, indicating there was something even graver she hesitated to disclose. Despite her fears of judgment, I assured her of my unwavering respect and urged her to confide in me. What she revealed next was utterly shocking. Terry, in a descent into vindictiveness, had concocted a plan to entrap me, aiming to have me arrested. This revelation painted a picture of Terry so dark and foreign. It was as if I had never truly known him. This plot against me, as described by Michelle, was like a nightmare unfolding in real life, challenging my understanding of who Terry was. Amidst the chaos and the threat, Michelle's willingness to stand by me and expose her son's scheme reinforced the depth of our bond. Her actions not only showcased her integrity, but also ensured that the impending divorce would not sever the familial ties we had formed. When I first fell for Terry, I never imagined I could be so mistaken about someone. Michelle's revelation about Terry's devious plan amplified my fears. He intended to stash some of his money in my new apartment and then tip off the police, aiming to protect his assets from being divided in the divorce. Our prenuptial agreement contained a clause that would nullify it if both parties were found at fault, and Terry believed exploiting this could work in his favor. He had confided this scheme to Michelle, mistakenly assuming she would keep his secret. Michelle was appalled by Terry's audacity and assured me of her unwavering support, denouncing her son's actions and expressing her shame. Michelle's solidarity was a silver lining amidst the turmoil. She reassured me that nothing could sever the bond we had formed. She viewed me as a daughter. Her determination to stand by me against Terry's malicious intent was heartening. With Michelle's encouragement, I devised a plan to counteract Terry's plot. Although I worried she might hesitate to endorse a strategy that could implicate her son, Michelle's response was unexpectedly supportive. She agreed that my plan was appropriate given the circumstances. To safeguard myself and expose Terry's ploy, I decided to install security cameras in my apartment. My building was already equipped with CCTV in the common areas, so I focused on covering the interior spaces. With assistance from a friend, I set up the surveillance system, ensuring no corner was left unwatched. Terry eventually made his move, arriving under the guise of wanting to discuss our divorce. His act was transparent, but I played along, curious to see him execute his plan. While I momentarily stepped into the kitchen, I observed him through the corner of my eye, sneaking something into my desk drawer in the study. Rather than confronting him immediately, I chose to let him believe his plan was unfolding as intended. I knew the cameras were capturing every detail of his actions. Once Terry hastily departed, his presence as aggravating as ever, I reviewed the camera footage. I was eager to confirm whether he had proceeded with planting the cash in my apartment, a critical piece in his elaborate scheme to entrap me. This evidence would be pivotal in turning the tables on Terry, ensuring his plan would be his undoing. Choosing not to inspect the cash placement myself, I aimed to convincingly claim ignorance if questioned by the police, so I verified the hidden money via my phone. Sure enough, Terry had concealed his cash in my desk, igniting a storm of fury within me. I couldn't help but feel immensely grateful for Michelle, my invaluable ally. Without her forewarning, I would have been blindsided and defenseless against Terry's accusations. With the evidence securely saved, I awaited Terry's next move. As expected, the police, accompanied by Terry, knocked on my door the following day. Greeting them, I feigned surprise at their presence, inquiring how I could assist. The officers explained Terry's allegation of me stealing $3,500 from him. I stood firm, denying any involvement with the money, stressing that theft was against my principles. Terry, impatient and agitated by the officers' impartial stance, accused me outright of lying. He claimed theft was habitual for me and a driving reason behind our divorce. His audacity was astonishing. He challenged me directly, confident in his belief that I'd be cornered by his plot. However, Terry's confidence was misplaced. When the officers sought my input, Hinting at a possible search for the cash, Terry's smirk suggested he expected my imminent downfall. But the tide was about to turn. I assured the officers of my innocence and promised to unveil the truth, hinting at tangible proof of the real sequence of events. Despite Terry's protests, urging the officers to dismiss my claims and arrest me on the spot, the police remained professional, willing to examine the evidence I had prepared. Terry's underestimation of me was about to unravel spectacularly. I prepared to disclose the video evidence, ready to demonstrate not only my innocence but Terry's deceitful scheme to entrap me. This moment was poised to redefine the entire situation, highlighting Terry's manipulation and vindicating me fully. Upon hearing the officers mention the need for an investigation before any arrest, Terry's fleeting moment of unease quickly dissolved back into indignation. It was clear the officers were not impressed by his impatience or his eagerness to see me arrested. I guided them to my workspace, unveiling the hidden cash that Terry was so certain would condemn me. His smugness briefly surfaced, convinced he had me cornered. Contrary to his expectations, I acknowledged the money's presence but clarified I hadn't placed it there. I informed the officers of the comprehensive surveillance system installed throughout my residence, highlighting my independence and the lack of necessity for anyone else's consent to these measures. This setup, I explained, would validate my innocence and identify the true culprit behind the cash's placement. Terry's confidence wavered at the mention of the surveillance, but he hastily dismissed the need to review the footage, arguing that the discovery of the money was sufficient evidence against me. However, the officers corrected him, insisting on conducting their duties without interference and expressing a willingness to view the camera footage for a clearer understanding of the events. I readily presented my phone to the officers, showing them the recorded evidence that detailed how the cash ended up in my closet. My precautions ensured that any personal moments were kept private, limiting my concerns about presenting the footage. Terry, caught off guard by the existence of the footage and unsure of its contents, anxiously awaited the officers' response. As they reviewed the video, Terry's facade of certainty crumbled, revealing his underlying panic. The footage depicted the events as they unfolded, showcasing my innocence and implicating Terry in an attempt to frame me. This turn of events not only exonerated me but also highlighted Terry's deception, shifting the officers' scrutiny toward him. The officers, having reviewed the footage, confronted Terry with evidence of his attempt to frame me. "It appears you were the one placing the money in her closet, intending to have your wife arrested," they noted, dismantling Terry's narrative. His protests and denials quickly crumbled under the weight of undeniable evidence, as he fumbled for an explanation that could absolve him of his actions. Terry's fear escalated as the officers outlined the potential legal consequences he now faced, including the possibility of being charged for misuse of police resources, alongside allegations of harassment and defamation against me. His initial bravado gave way to panic, visibly shaken as he tried to dismiss the damning footage as some kind of error. The police, unimpressed by Terry's attempt to backtrack, turned their attention to me, inquiring if I wished to press charges. At that moment, Terry's demeanor shifted from defiance to desperation, his eyes pleading for leniency. Despite the clear opportunity to pursue legal action, I hesitated, pondering the ramifications. "It's a misunderstanding," I suggested, hoping to resolve the matter without further legal entanglement. The officers, however, emphasized that the decision rested with me, reinforcing my right to seek justice for the wrongs Terry had committed. Faced with the reality of his precarious situation, Terry's appeal for a private resolution was tinged with urgency. "Nancy, we can sort this out ourselves. No need to involve the police," he implored, the irony of his earlier actions not lost on me. "Why not, Terry? You were quick to involve them without cause," I countered, highlighting his baseless accusations and the serious implications of his scheme. His admission of a dumb mistake was a desperate bid to evade the consequences of his actions, a last-ditch effort to salvage what little remained of his credibility. Terry's justification for his actions was to level the playing field in our divorce, afraid that I'd have the upper hand. When he mentioned his fear of me keeping the prenup advantages, I couldn't hide my disdain for how low he had sunk. "I hope she's worth it," I told him, indicating his new partner and the lengths he went to for her. The realization that he was about to face legal consequences visibly shocked him, draining the color from his face. I informed the officers of my decision to press charges, and they promptly handcuffed Terry. His reaction, a mix of tears and pleas, was both pitiful and repulsive to witness. Any remnants of pity I might have harbored vanished upon seeing his true colors, especially after learning about his affair. His apologies, now hollow and meaningless, did nothing to sway me as the police led him away. Feeling a sense of liberation after his departure, I reached out to Michelle to update her on the situation. She wasn't surprised by the developments, but I felt it necessary to caution her about potential fallout. Terry's inevitable release on bail might lead him straight to her, possibly suspecting her role in his arrest. Michelle, ever the steadfast figure, was ready for any confrontation, even willing to sever ties with her son if necessary. She expressed a readiness to face Terry, unafraid to share her disgust with his actions and her involvement in revealing his scheme. Her resolve was clear. If Terry chose to cut her off for standing up for what's right, it would be a loss he'd have to bear. Michelle's disappointment in Terry had reached its peak, indicating a profound shift in their relationship. Her stance underscored a deep-seated disillusionment with his behavior, signaling an end to any tolerance she had left for his antics. Michelle, contemplating the aftermath of everything that transpired, decided it was time for a significant change in her will. "I'm thinking of disinheriting him," she revealed, expressing her unwillingness to let someone who shattered our lives benefit from her wealth. The revelation of her son's criminal actions and betrayal was too much for her to overlook. Hearing Michelle's decision was overwhelming. Tears were hard to hold back. It was reassuring to know there was someone firmly in my corner, ready to stand against the injustice I faced. Michelle, more than just a mother-in-law, became a source of comfort and promised adventures post-divorce, starting with a trip we planned together. Regarding Terry's arrest, I opted against suing him, using the situation as leverage to expedite our divorce. The prenuptial agreement played in my favor, granting me a substantial portion of our assets and ensuring he covered my legal expenses. Terry's devious plans backfired, leaving him not only financially depleted, but also losing his affair partner once she realized the financial impact of his decisions. His misguided belief in her affection only compounded his losses. The fallout from our divorce, affair, and his arrest caused a rift within his family circle. Many distanced themselves, unable to condone his actions. A significant confrontation with Michelle ended with her disowning him, severing what little family connection remained. As for me, this period marked a transformation. The divorce not only secured my financial independence, but also allowed me to forge a stronger bond with Michelle. Our travels from California to a planned trip to Italy have been a source of joy and healing. While I've paused dating to focus on my mental health, life has been fulfilling, with each day bringing new lessons and opportunities to grow independently.